He thought it was going well. That is the part that makes it sting. He thought the dynamic was strong, that she was engaged, that something real was building between them. And then slowly, quietly, without a single confrontation or direct explanation, she began to pull back. The warmth cooled. The responses became shorter. The energy that had once moved toward him began to move in another direction entirely. And he was left standing in the space where connection used to be, genuinely unable to identify the moment it changed. This is not an unusual story. It happens more than most men realize, and it happens with a particular consistency in relationships where there is a meaningful age gap. Not because the age gap itself is the problem, but because certain habits, certain deeply ingrained patterns of thinking and behaving, tend to develop in men over time in ways that feel completely natural from the inside and are quietly devastating from the outside. What most people don't realize is that the things that erode attraction in these relationships are rarely dramatic. They are not grand betrayals or obvious failures. They are subtle. They accumulate. They work slowly, the way water works on stone, and by the time the damage is visible, it has already been happening for a long time. And the most painful part is that most of the men who do these things are doing them with the best intentions. They believe they are being caring or experienced or protective. They do not realize that the very habits they think are assets are functioning as walls. Stay with me here. The first habit, and perhaps the most pervasive, is speaking in conclusions rather than conversations. He has lived longer. He has seen more. He has made mistakes she hasn't made yet and arrived at understandings that took him years to reach. And so when she brings him a problem, a question, a situation she is navigating, his instinct is to give her the answer, to skip the messy middle and hand her the conclusion he eventually arrived at after years of his own experience. It feels like a gift. It feels like sparing her unnecessary suffering. But what it actually feels like to her is being managed. Think about it. When someone consistently skips past your process and hands you their conclusion, what they are communicating without intending to is that your journey through the question is not interesting or valuable to them. That the thinking you are doing matters less than the answer they already have. And for a woman who is at a particular stage of her own becoming, who needs the freedom to think out loud, to arrive at her own understanding through her own experience, this habit feels suffocating, even when the conclusions are right, especially when the conclusions are right. There is something deeper happening here. The second habit is comparative storytelling. This is the moment when she shares something about her life, her work, her friendships, her struggles, and he responds by telling her about when he went through something similar, usually something larger, usually something that ended with him having figured it out. He is trying to connect. He is trying to demonstrate empathy through shared experience, but what she hears underneath the story is a subtle repositioning. Her moment becomes the setup for his moment. Her experience becomes a launching pad for his narrative. And over time, she stops bringing him the real things, because the real things keep getting reflected back as chapters in his story rather than chapters in hers. What most people don't realize is that the ability to simply receive another person's experience without immediately filtering it through your own is one of the rarest and most powerful relational skills in existence. It requires restraint. It requires genuine curiosity about her inner world as something separate and complete from your own. And it is precisely this restraint that younger women find so magnetic when they encounter it and so deeply disappointing when it is absent. Now we move deeper. The third habit is what might be called protective overfunctioning. He worries about her. He wants things to go well for her. He sees risks she hasn't considered, pitfalls she might not recognize, ways in which the path she is on could lead somewhere difficult. And so he intervenes. He offers unsolicited guidance. He warns her about things she didn't ask to be warned about. He adjusts her plans, questions her decisions, suggests better approaches to situations she was handling in her own way. All of this comes from care, genuine, deep, protective care, but it lands as something else entirely. It lands as a quiet message that he does not fully trust her judgment, that her competence in his eyes is conditional, that she needs supervision. And for a woman who chose this relationship in part because she believed she had found a man who would see her fully, who would respect the completeness of who she is, this is among the most corrosive discoveries she can make. Because she did not come looking for a manager. She came looking for a partner. This is where things become interesting. The fourth habit is rigidity disguised as wisdom. He has developed a worldview through decades of experience, and that worldview is often genuinely sophisticated, genuinely hard-won, genuinely worth having. But somewhere along the way, it calcified. What was once an open, evolving understanding of the world became a fixed set of positions. And now, when she brings him a new perspective, a different way of seeing something, a framework that doesn't map onto his existing understanding, instead of genuine curiosity, she gets a gentle but firm redirection back toward what he already knows to be true. This habit is particularly damaging because it is so invisible to the man who has it. From the inside, he is simply being clear about what he knows. From the outside, she is watching the person she loves become unable to learn from her. And that inability, the inability to receive growth from someone younger, to allow yourself to be genuinely changed by a perspective that comes from someone with fewer years, is one of the most quietly devastating things an older man can communicate to a younger woman, because it tells her that the relationship flows in only one direction, and relationships that flow in only one direction eventually stop flowing entirely. We'll come back to what all of this points toward. But before we go there, consider the fifth habit. He apologizes for the age gap, not always in words, but in behavior. He over-explains himself. He qualifies his preferences and opinions. He becomes preemptively defensive about the difference in their years, bringing it into conversations where it was not present, turning it into a third presence in their dynamic that neither of them invited, but that he keeps insisting on acknowledging. He is trying to be humble, trying to demonstrate awareness, trying to make it clear that he knows the gap is real and that he does not take it for granted. But what he is actually doing is destabilizing the very thing she found attractive in him in the first place. Think about it. She chose him with full awareness of the difference in their ages. She made that choice deliberately with open eyes. When he keeps returning to it as a source of insecurity or apology, he is not being sensitive. He is being unsettled. And an unsettled man, regardless of his age, is not the same man she said yes to. What happens next is important. The sixth habit is nostalgia as a conversational default. There is a version of this that is charming and connecting, where the past is offered as context, as color, as a window into who he has been and how he has been shaped. But there is another version that becomes a kind of retreat, where the past is where he is most fully alive, where his best stories live, where his identity feels most secure. And when that happens, when the conversation continually returns to then rather than now, she begins to feel that she is not in a relationship with the man he is. She is in a relationship with the man he was. And the man he was cannot grow with her into the life they are both still living. The seventh habit is perhaps the most subtle and the most important. It is the loss of genuine curiosity about her. Not curiosity in the early relationship sense, the discovery of her history and preferences and personality, but ongoing curiosity, the kind that understands that a person is not a fixed thing to be known once and then understood permanently, the kind that keeps asking, keeps noticing, keeps finding her interesting and surprising and worth paying attention to. When this curiosity fades, when he begins to feel that he has understood her and moves his attention elsewhere, she experiences something that has no clean name, but that every person recognizes immediately when it happens to them. She experiences being taken for granted. And nothing erodes attraction more reliably or more permanently than that feeling. Now we arrive at what all 7 of these habits share. And this is the part that changes the way you see everything that came before it. Every single one of these habits is a form of the same deeper error. They are all ways of stopping growing, stopping being curious, stopping allowing yourself to be changed by someone else's presence. They are the habits of a man who has, in various ways, decided that he is largely finished, that the major work of becoming has been done, that what remains is to share what he has accumulated rather than to keep accumulating. And the deeper truth is this. She did not choose him because he was finished. She chose him because of what his years had built in him, the depth, the groundedness, the self-knowledge. But those qualities are not static achievements. They are living capacities that require continued investment to remain vital. The moment a man stops growing, those qualities do not stay where they are. They begin to calcify. And calcification, in a person as in anything else, is the beginning of a different kind of ending. The question that opened this conversation was about what older men do that destroys attraction, but that was always the wrong framing, because the real question has never been about what to avoid. The real question is this: are you still becoming? Not in the anxious, striving way of someone who has not yet found himself, but in the quiet, continuous way of someone who understands that growth is not a phase of life. It is the whole of it. That is what she needs to see in you. Not what you were, not what you know, but evidence, living and present and ongoing, that you are still a man who can be surprised, who can be moved, who can change. A man who meets her not with the authority of his past, but with the aliveness of his present. That is what keeps her. Not the years behind you, the life still in you. If this opened something for you, there is much more to explore. Stay close.